Hi, sisters. Welcome back to the Sisterhood Spotlight series, where I bring you a member of my personal sisterhood to highlight the work of amazing women in the world and show you just how possible it is for you to do something amazing and live your mission and be a leader of your life and the world. So today, I'm super excited to share Nadia Munla with you today, and she is a health and sensuality coach who guides women to sensual nourishment and embodied power by helping them reconnect to their own body voice. Nadia is immensely passionate about getting women out of their heads and into their bodies so they can feel safe and confident with their unique feminine genius. Through her dance classes, immersion workshops, and one-on-one coaching, Nadia has helped women in over 5 continents connect to their pleasure potential. And when she's not traveling with her partner, she's usually hanging upside down on a pole, making smoothies, or drinking wine with her girlfriends. And we have a really awesome offer for you that we're going to present at the end of this interview. A free gift from Nadia and a free gift from me as well if you found this interview from Nadia's audience, or you're not on my list yet, or you haven't received a gift from me. So super exciting. And Nadia and I met, just to give you a quick background, we met at the Captivate retreat this summer, and we did her Pleasure Playground dance class. It was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had in movement, and I can't wait for her to share more about what that experience is like and the thought behind it and how it works and why and anything else she wants to share, because it's absolutely genius. And if you live in New York City, you should definitely check out her class. I think she has one coming up December 5th, is it?
December 6th.
December 6th. So if you're in New York City, definitely stay tuned for more details about that. But I'd love to throw it over to Nadia and get started here. So I'd love to first know, tell us a little bit about your journey to how you got to where you are today and what you're currently up to and creating in your business.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and just want to say hi to all the ladies watching. So yeah, a little bit about how I got into this amazing mess. So it really started off when I was just getting recurrent tummy aches. Like I would say starting from like the age of like 13, 14, I would just wake up with like insane belly aches, like 5:30 in the morning, trying to get up to go to school. And it was just like, I couldn't even like stand up. And that just got worse and worse and worse until I was around 16. I got diagnosed with 2 ulcers. And all I kept getting from the doctors was, oh, you're really stressed. You need to just cut down on being stressed. And like, truth be told, I was a pretty stressed out teenager. I mean, weren't we all? But that wasn't actually the reason behind what was going on. So what happened was, a few more years passed and I was just taking the meds and doing what, you do when you're 16 and doctors tell you to do something. And as I got into college, I just found myself continuing to feel really disconnected from the source of the problem. And so I decided I'm just going to take matters into my own hands and figure out what is really going on. And so with the help of an amazing like naturopath I found like online called Dan, I'll never forget him, and like a bunch of other people who I collected, healers and beautiful like nutritionists and coaches and stuff over the years, I came to really start to understand that the problem was food intolerances and a whole bunch of other holistic issues that were going on inside of me, and that it really was up to me, that I could do what I needed to do to get myself back in shape. And I did, and I'm super ulcer free now. I don't even get tummy aches. That's really rare. And the reason I speak about that is that was the journey that launched me into the world of like geeking out on nutrition. And that's what got me to get certified at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition as a holistic health coach. Now, so this was like one journey. At the same time, there was sort of a parallel journey happening here where over the years, as I was blossoming more into like my erotic feminine body, there was a continuous shutting down of my body, right? So we get this everywhere. I'm sure a lot of ladies who are listening know exactly what I'm talking about, whether it's media messages, whether it's and little signals that you get here and there on a day-to-day basis that tell you it's dangerous. It's dangerous to really be in your feminine body and to express your eroticism and to move the way you naturally move as a woman. And so you start to live here and you disconnect from everything below the neck. And so what happened with me is, because I already had like all the issues going on in my belly, and I really wanted to disconnect from everything below, and there was all these messages about my sexuality and my feminine body that were coming at me. By the time I got to college, there was this, I was just living right here. The part that you guys see. And so, and to top it all off, right? Like, we're living in a society that values like very masculine traits of success. And like, and I was in school and it was all about like, I'm going to get the best grades and I'm going to go and get the best job. And, you know, all the stuff that you try to do to supposedly be a better human. And so for me, I was like, oh, all that matters is how smart I am. And everything else is just like an obstacle. I have a stomach ache. What can I do to just not feel it so that I can go and, you know, write this paper and get an A on it so I can then go get the job? And so over so many years, I just found myself really completely disconnected from everything connected to my feminine side and my body wisdom. And then slowly what started to happen was I ended up in a pole dancing studio. I loved it. And I started to get back into dancing, which is something I actually did growing up a lot. I was like on the track to becoming a professional ballerina, but then had to stop because I also had some problems in my knees. So what happened was suddenly there was this like portal back into my body through this pole dancing class that really allowed me to reconnect with that energy and with that wisdom and with the story inside my cells that I had been ignoring. And so suddenly it was like, there was this like awakening, that was happening in my body of like, oh, this is powerful. And I think I want to connect more and more with this part of me. So it's sort of a two-story thing, but that's really how the two roads converged. I ended up in this place where I ultimately do the health and I do the sensuality through the body as a portal.
Mm. Yeah. That's so amazing. I just love you and your story. It's so awesome. Like, just the femininity connection there of the body, and I love what you said about operating from here, because it's so, like, I can relate to that so much, and I'm sure so many women can. And I know, just being in college and everything with the women who I was close with when I was in school, it was all about, okay, how can we be as smart as we can possibly be? And then that's where we placed our value. And it was almost like being a woman really meant, okay, how can I prove myself in my intelligence, instead of like, how can I be more of who I am, be in my body, like connect to that part of myself. It's almost completely shut off. So true.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question for you, which dovetails really nicely with what you just spoke about, is what is your mission or the big why behind what you're creating in the world and through your business?
Ooh, well, I think ultimately it comes down to giving women permission to connect to their whole self and to really dive into like deep, full nourishment. And so one, I guess, way to get there is through pleasure and really embodied power, which is what I talk about a lot. But I think ultimately, yeah, the why is, what do I need to create in the world so that women can really feel safe being connected to the full spectrum of who they can be. And I think that's missing a lot in the world is, you know, with the clients I work with, the students I have in the dance classes, there's always a certain energy, a certain emotion that we are not as connected to, or a part of us, an archetypal energy in us that we're just not really connected to. And so what happens is we think we continue sometimes to really live in these worlds and the energies that we do know so well because they feel okay. And it's like, I'll give you an example for me. Like, I was not at all about motherly energy. Like, I didn't have a very tight connection with my mom growing up. I was very much like my dad's daughter. And as a result, I just don't have like a motherly nurturing energy with myself, that dynamic. And so when I found myself on my journey in personal development, really getting in touch and living in that world and that energy of motherly and nurturing, just love, really self-love is what it comes down to. It was just, I felt like the spectrum of my being just sort of like got stretched even more. So I may have been really good in like the sensual siren energy and, you know, my playful side and my silly side and the like take no shit side, right? But like then that part wasn't. And so now it's like, wow, I feel like I'm accessing a part of me and my essence that just makes all the other parts richer and more dynamic and flows into all these different areas of my life. And so this is what I hope to achieve with, you know, with the women that I'm working with, is like a chance for you to really stretch yourself into your full spectrum.
I love that. That's a very similar experience that I've had with archetypal, with doing like goddess archetype work with in the mastermind that I was in with Janine Yoder, my mentor. And amazing. Like, I've never felt more whole, like is the only way I can think to really describe it. Just more of myself, but on a full spectrum. I love that metaphor. It's so true. And that's been my experience. Have you done, I mean, I know that with your dance class, you do a lot of archetypal work, but if you, for the people who are listening who don't understand what that means, because I think we kind of sometimes forget that, you know, I do all the time, that not everybody knows what like an archetype is. Can you explain that? Do you have a way that you like to explain that to people?
Sure. Yeah. So archetype, I mean, that's why I like to use the word energies as well, and emotions. And I think archetypes are just sort of like classic, I don't know, categories sounds like such a lame word to use here, but it's just a way to bring together a type of energy, a bunch of traits that you can put on and wear and connect to. That are similar and have sort of been the same over the years. So when we go back, when we were talking about, you know, folklore and just like myths and all, even in, you know, the stuff that is not necessarily fiction, but if you go back historically, there's always certain characters, right? And it's amongst female characters now, you know, the problem is with our media, we're really backwards because we just have, you know, the sort of the hot girlfriend, right, in a film, or now you may have like on TV, it's getting a little better, but in film, you know, you may have now like the superhero that's actually a woman, but we don't have nowadays in pop culture, there isn't much exploration of these energies. You just have like the woman who's like the accessory, or the woman who's like the anti-accessory, right? And it's like, there's so much more, right? There's like the part of us that's really nurturing and embracing and compassionate. There's the part of us that's all about alluring, seductive energy. There's part of us that's angry as hell. and wants to use that energy, you know, to really get stuff done. There's the part of it. So there's, you know, and I can go on and on and on because there's so many energies. And that's part of why the work that you're doing, the work that, you know, I'm doing, the work that so many other amazing women are doing out there is important, is because we have so many of us who are just watching these films and who are just going to work and being like, oh, all that matters is functioning, you know, from here to here. And so connecting back to how many versions of yourself you can be that are still you, as a woman is just fascinating, and can help, I think, cultivate just more understanding and compassion in the world, which is so needed right now anyways.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think the one thing that's interesting to me about those examples of women in, you know, pop culture, of one woman who's operating from here, where she's like super independent, very masculine, very driven, can totally do it all on her own and feels like, oh, I don't need anybody. I'm so strong by myself in a way. And then the other example I feel like is the woman who has, it's like she has no brain and she's just operating from, like, the only valued part of her is from, like, well, it still includes her head, but not what's in it. You know, like the more in the body thing, or to make her the accessory, where it's just like, okay, well, she can, so you either have one example of, okay, a beautiful or more lovely version of a man, or a complete, you know, just accessory who's a woman within a woman's body, but there's nothing really beneath the surface. That's so true. It's like that dichotomy of either or, and there's a whole missing middle of what we can actually be, and what we would really love to be is probably all of that, right? Is to be that sometimes and that sometimes and everything else in between sometimes, and never be just stuck in one way of like good or good enough, of what we should be by someone else's standards. So very cool. I love this conversation about archetypes. I could talk about this forever. So I'm wondering too, a lot of what I talk about is leadership and what that means for women in the world today. And so I'm wondering, how do you define leadership, and how do you walk your talk as a leader in your life and in your business? And what is your perspective around leadership and conscious leadership and leadership as women doing our work in the world?
It's such a great question, especially as women in the world. I think that it ultimately comes down to embodiment. So you're even saying it in the question, right? You're like, how do you walk your talk? It's really about embodying your values. So I believe that whether you're a coach in this industry, whether you are a leader in the in the political or social world, whether you're working in an NGO, like whatever sphere you're in, ultimately people flock towards you and your why and your mission, because they get the sense that you really are embodying the values that you speak about, as opposed to how smart or strategic it is what you're saying. So that it really is like, it's nearly like it's just coming out of your pores, right? Everything. And so for me, I would say, my top values are really about permission and pleasure. And then on the other end is connection and compassion. So to me, this has been difficult because I've told you guys, like my default was here, and it's very easy for me to go back there. It's a constant daily recommitment to go, I am not going to live just in here, and that this has not been the answer. And to really have faith in my body's wisdom and in my intuition as a woman. And so to do that, there's certain things I need to create. And this is where I'm going to get into like really pragmatic stuff. For those people who are heady, this is going to be fun. So what I do to really keep myself on track is to have rituals of certain things that I do that always bring me back into my body. because it's very easy for me. The easiest thing for me is to wake up, have a cup of coffee, and get to my email. Right, like that. I skipped this whole section of my life, but I was a film producer before I became health coach. And as a film producer, you have to be on call 24/7 all the time. You're there to put out fires. You're the one managing everything. And so it's so easy for me to default to my inbox because it's like, it's expected that you respond and you're on your BlackBerry and you respond within 30 seconds like it's a text message. And so it took me quite a while to get out of that. And I'm getting into the nitty gritty because I think I can answer this question really like bombastically and like generally, but I think it's important to get specific. And so instead of getting to my email, I will try as much as possible, depending on where I am seasonally in my business and what I'm launching, I will try to have anywhere between half an hour to even 3 hours where I'm just focusing on myself and on my body and getting really connected to everything below here before I go up into the headspace and do the like typical work and to-do lists and spreadsheets and social media and all of that stuff. And so that may look like anything from a combination of yoga class and meditation. Sometimes I do a moving meditation at home, which is a more feminine way for me of connecting to an inner peace and a calmness that works really well. And I can talk more about that later if you're interested. And then random other things. Sometimes it's just playing. Sometimes it's nourishing myself by listening to a podcast, reading a book, coloring. I love making playlists. It's one of my favorite things ever. So researching music always nourishes me because it's like I have a lot of water and Scorpio, like I'm a double Scorpio and I have a lot of water in my birth chart. So it's like music just takes me to that creative place and I feel it in my body on every single level. So I think the key here for the women who are listening is to really go, okay, how quickly do I default in the morning to going up here? And is there something, and it could be as short as 2 minutes. For me, it started off as 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be 3 hours because that I can see how that seems crazy to some people. But even just a 2-minute practice that could involve something as simple as putting your hand on your heart and your belly and just breathing for 2 minutes, listening to a really fun song while you do that. Doesn't need to be like chanting mantra stuff. It totally could be, but sometimes I just play really like a fun song because that's what I feel like. Sometimes it's just about doing jumping jacks for 2 minutes or jumping up and down or like hip circles or just like listening to Shakira or like just anything that gets all those juices flowing. And so I think ultimately that's my practice, and that's a way in which I'm then able to show up in the world and with my tribe and community and say, not necessarily say anything actually, and just be and really be in that place that I'm speaking about or that I'm representing.
I love that. I think that's so necessary. I think that's what I talk about too when I say changing the world from the inside out is really the energetic alignment of how you want to be, as opposed to just going straight up to our headspace and getting into the strategy and just doing. All that action kind of means nothing if you're not first getting the energy aligned of, okay, here's what I'm creating, like feeling into the space or the vision or just how you want to feel in that, whatever you're doing throughout your day. Yeah, I think it's so true. It's that internal alignment first, and then second is the default of, okay, then that just spreads by me showing up wherever I show up because I've taken care of my own self to the point where everyone else can feel that and feel the way I want to feel, and then I spread that like wildfire. But I think it can also go the other way where if we don't do that first, then we're just spread it. It's more like, it's almost like wildfire in a bad way, right? It can be destructive because we're just spreading this frenetic energy around that isn't necessarily positive because we're not cultivating it from within. So, and I love your idea of a moving meditation. I can't wait to dig into that a little bit too, because I've added that into my morning rituals since the retreat, since since you taught the class, because I just loved it so much. And I was like, I'm a Pisces, so I have a lot of water too. And it is so true. Like, I just love movement and like flowing. And it does something for me that a sitting silent meditation does not do. And now even when I sit and meditate, I've made like a playlist for myself to sit and like feel into. And sometimes I'll just start like hip circling or something, or I guess like more like chest circling.
Yeah.
As I sit. So yes.
I'd love to add one more thing onto that.
Yeah.
It's really, this is where I just geek out big time. So one thing that I think is really interesting is that everyone, the mainstream version of meditation is like, right, sitting down. Great, I do it. I try to do it every single day. It's an amazing practice to have. With that said, we have not realized, and I think I initially heard this from a woman called Ashley Turner. She teaches yoga as well, and she's a coach, and she's really a lot about feminine meditation. And when I heard this from her, it like blew my mind. She was like, basically there are, we've only had that masculine version of meditation come from the East to the West, but there's so many other more feminine versions of meditation. And feminine energy just naturally wants to move. And the masculine meditation is very much sort of a Buddhist, and I can't say this was something she said, but this is sort of stuff I gathered after I got so interested in this concept, is that, the masculine meditation comes from a Buddhist tradition of transcending the physical to connect to the divine and the spiritual. Whereas I think moving meditation and more of a feminine meditation is more based on the tantric tradition of use the body, use the physical to connect to the divine. And this is really the work that I do, is like, okay, I can understand in my head how you can transcend physically to get to the spiritual realm, but I usually only feel that transcendence once I've deepened into my physical, and once I've like danced it all out and yelled it all out and stomped it all out. And then I sit in silence and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And it's so much easier to sit in that silence for me after all that energy has moved. And so for women who have more of a feminine essence, I find with clients, anyone who tells me, oh, I don't know about meditation, it doesn't really work for me, I'm always like, all right, we're going to try this new thing where you're just going to do, and like you were saying, it's actually a heart-opening meditation where you can be sitting very similar to a stillness meditation practice, cross-legged, hands on your knees, but all that's happening is you're circling. And I have a video for this if you wanted to put it at the bottom or anywhere for people to see. But you're just sort of circling. You can close your eyes, relax your neck, and all you're doing is sinking deep into your senses and into any music that you may be listening to, which of course is one of your senses. And it's in that you lose yourself in the swirl. Like if we think about like Sufism, right? I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but like there's just amazing, like they do these just circular, like they basically just get themselves really dizzy without getting dizzy. I don't know what they do. But there's just this tradition of dancing. And if you look at other cultures, like with women, there's a lot of, like, I've been listening to Moroccan gnawa, I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, music lately. And it's also a music in Morocco they use to trance you out, where women dance and dance for hours in a tent and then just collapse. And they're like, okay, I'm done.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, we're just doing the Western version of this, like, except it's to Eminem and like, I don't know what else. So so I think it's key to just remember that there's so many different ways to access connection to the other, whatever that is for you. And the senses and from my philosophy is the easiest way to plug into that.
Oh, that's so good. I just had a conversation with someone the other day, and it was actually, it's interesting because this is totally it seems off topic, but it's the same solution. We were talking about when she's feeling depressed. She's been working through depression for a long time. And so we've created this strategy for her in a way, not that this is what I specialize in, but it was just something that came up. And we basically got her reconnected. Her ritual is now to reconnect intentionally to each sense, to bring her back into her body, because she said when she was feeling that way, she wanted to disconnect from her body, and she wouldn't take care of her body, and she wouldn't like feed herself well, and she didn't really want to go do things that normally made her happy. So we tapped her back in, and it's almost just like what you're saying, the pleasure centers, right, is they're all in your body. So if we can tap back into each sense intentionally, like, okay, scent, touch, taste, smell, what am I missing? I don't remember. Hearing.
Yeah, I know. I'm always like, wait, what are they?
I repeated them twice in a different word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But that was just she was like, wow, that's actually going to work. Like, this actually works, and nothing else has gotten me to that place. And I feel like it's so true that we, that's in a way, right, that disconnection is being here instead of in the whole body, in the full spectrum of yourself. Or I see so many women who are ambitious and they want to be successful, and they operate strictly from here. And there's only so far that you can go, and so much potential that can actually be reached from that space until you drop down into the soulful place where you're really connected. And I love what you do with the classes and the dance and the sensual movement, because that is the way that I feel most connected. And I know other people feel that too. It's not just me, obviously. You feel it, and other people feel it. And I was never into meditating before, because it felt so wrong in my body to sit there. I was like, but this is not the way that I feel like it's not working. Like, I was like, I feel like I'm not really connecting as deeply as I would love to be. And I think that headspace versus heart space balance is like, where do we start? We have to start with the heart. We have to start with the why. We have to start with the body. And I think from there, then you can use your mind as the tool and the how almost, but the body and the heart and the soul are the why. The way I think of it is like the why drives everything, but then the how is the more masculine, right? Like the container that helps it happen, right? And I think I was listening to Liz D'Alto's podcast, Untame the Wild Soul Woman, which we had both mentioned that we were really into. If you haven't checked it out, guys, you have to listen. But I forget who she was interviewing, but she was doing this Manvember month where she was interviewing men. And one of the guys said, he put it so simply, and it was really interesting. I've never heard it this way, but the masculine makes it possible and the feminine makes it worthwhile. And I just loved that. Yes, Andy Drish. That's exactly. Yeah. I was just like, oh, that's amazing. It's so simple, like streamlined. And I just like felt that so much. It was beautiful. I just love that, feminine, masculine energy conversation. I think it's so needed and valuable today.
Yeah. And I think, as you were speaking about all of this, and Andy's amazing, and that interview is like perfect, perfection, was that sensuality is a muscle that you build. It really is. And so for me, dropping in took way longer 5 years ago when I first started pole dancing and connecting to my sensuality than it does now. Now it could be a 10-second, I'd realize I'm not present, and suddenly I'm like, okay. And like you said, I think unconsciously I tap into one sense, whatever sense is easily accessible in that moment, and it just helps ground me back. Like, okay, I'm here now. Like, I'm back. I don't know where I was, but I'm back now. And it's funny because like you know, a lot of people, because I still work a lot with the health and the nourishment side of things from a very nutritional standpoint, I have a lot of clients who are like, oh, about the cooking thing. And I have them, just yesterday, I was talking to a woman about this. It's all about mindset shift and having it be a moving meditation too. Like ultimately, people, the reason why we have stillness meditation practices is in order to then be able to move through life in a meditative state of some sort. Mm-hmm. And what that really means is just being present. And so with the kitchen, if you're someone who's like, oh, I don't know about the cooking, it just feels like I should be somewhere else. That's what she was saying. She was like, I always feel like there's better use of my time. And I'm like, but if you really shift that mindset to, wow, this purple cabbage is so cool when I cut it. P.S. This is my this is my mind when I'm doing things in the kitchen. And then like, oh my God, the smell of like fresh basil and like sauteed garlic, and like using all your senses to really make this like a magical process in itself. And I'm not saying every day in the kitchen is going to be magical. I get it. Life is life. But there's times where I really make a meal and I'm not in there for forever. I'm in there for like 20 minutes, but it's part of my meditative practice for the day. It's part of what I use to presence and reground myself into my body and into my senses after I've been on the computer for 3 hours. So that's just another way to do it. It doesn't necessarily, like you and I are talking about dancing, and that's great. And that's obviously what I like most, but there's so many other places where you can start to really build that muscle.
I love that. And I love also, I used to be really into cooking and now I'm kind of getting back into it, but I studied sustainable food systems in college as well. So I had been like on a farm and everything we had was like fresh, amazing, like in the summer from farmers markets. Like we literally didn't eat anything that wasn't grown within like a 20-mile radius for the whole it was amazing. And I like became so addicted to the act of cooking and just those like, because I could really appreciate like where it was coming from and the beauty of like picking that basil, or like, oh, we had planted these tomatoes a month ago and now we're eating. It's so cool. So that's definitely another way too, I think, is like that nature aspect of really knowing where it comes from and appreciating the process too, of like, then you can easily tap into like, oh, look how beautiful it is, and look how great it is that I'm choosing this over, you know, going to a grocery store and buying the prepackaged purple cabbage that's already cut. You know what I mean? That saves time, but it's kind of like that almost takes away from that sensual experience for us in a way. So yeah. Okay, so my next question for you is, I often talk about redefining success on our own terms and writing our own rules for ourselves. And I know that you are someone who does this as well. So how would you define success for you? And if you have anything to share around maybe how you came to that conclusion or how you clarified what that would look like for you, and then anything else you want to share around the idea of success?
Yeah, it's a great question because success is such a tricky word. And I would say if there's anywhere that I'm still working on that feels like a growth point for me, it's continuing to redefine success. Because as one of those typical like overachievers, like I was talking about earlier, and just being the person who always imagined myself, 30 and I'm running a multi-million-dollar business and I have, all the fun things that you dream about. To me, it's been a really challenging process every single day to go back to what does it really mean to make an impact? Because that's ultimately what I want from the success. So even as a you know, younger kid thinking about, oh, 30 multi-million-dollar business, it was never like, oh, I want to be swimming in money. It always was coming from a place that's never a bad thing. It was always from a place of, I really want to leave a legacy. I want to have an impact. I want to spread whatever it is I do really, you know, I'm really good at, as far and wide as possible. And so I think it's difficult to rewire our systems to be like, oh, but that isn't really always in dollar signs, or in how many people are on your mailing list, or in how many people show up to your dance class, but it's the quality of the impact that you have. And so for me, I just have certain practices that I always come back to. You know, one thing that I think this is originally a Kate Northrup exercise, but I'm not 100% sure, where she basically advocates at the end of the day, just always going back and going, how did I add value to the world today? And giving yourself a couple of things, like, and it could be from smiling at the cashier on the way out, which is like a big thing. I used to be so not that person. I mean, we're in New York. We're in New York. Everyone's like busy and like running around, and it's nearly like the default is to be like, ugh, you know. And so now I make a very concerted effort to really look people in the eyes who I'm talking to or interacting with, even if we're not talking. And to me, that is a successful day. Is like when I've remembered to be present, when I've remembered to really take into account everyone else who I'm interacting with, and then have any sort of impact, whatever size that is. Now, like I said, it's a growth process. So there's still days where I'm like, I need to be doing more. But I think it's so important for us to really just come back to, how can we make the world a better place with the tiny little actions? And it may sound cheesy, but smiling at the cashier has a huge ripple effect and can make her feel really good. And that could be just as powerful as signing someone up for 6 months of coaching, right? It's just different. So I think the keys here, the barometer and the criteria that we're using to define that measure of success. And I think just going back to the little things is really humbling, and it's really hard, but it's important.
I love that. I'm sure that it sounds like we're pretty much the same person in terms of you know, having this really type A overachieving personality in college, and kind of growing out of that in a way, and now seeing that as like, oh, that's how I've wired myself in a way, or I've been wired, however you want to put it. But that doesn't actually serve me in this work in making an impact, because I get tripped up if I'm trying to make an impact, but also really, really focused and hard on myself about how much, you know, making multi-million-dollar company in the next year or two. You know what I mean? Like it's almost not necessary, and it's almost a byproduct of creating an impact, I think, is like when you create an impact, you create a mission, you create, you know, a tribe of people who are all about what you're about, and they want to know more. And if we're so focused on the other stuff, if we're trying to write a 7-figure business plan and there's no soul in it, and there's no why, and there's no real mission, like real core beliefs and impact that we want to make, if there's no vision there for what the impact looks like, then the 6 or 7-figure or 8-figure business plan doesn't really mean much, and it's kind of an empty thing, right? And then that's when we're living by someone else's definition, I think. But when our impact yields naturally, which it does and it will, because it's adding more beauty and love and light and all these things to the world that people need and want and desire and are craving, right? And the world is craving at large, you know, that we can never go wrong with that. And it's almost like it's a the income and the 7 figures or whatever numbers we want to be making, that comes after we have the first piece, which is the soulful part of what success looks like. I think that's really important and something I have to remind myself of, like you said, daily, because it's really easy to get like, oh, well, I should be farther along by now. I should have more clients. I should be doing this. I should probably write 10 articles today and like send them out and get them published on different things and attract more people. And it's just so like, we can get so caught on that treadmill of bleh. Like, we don't want to go there. It doesn't help. It doesn't work. We know that. So, but I think it's just so conditioned that we have to choose the other way. Like, and we need that accountability and support from the people around us to choose that.
Yeah, I think though what you're pointing out, which is so key here, is that it's you were talking about the sustainability when it comes to, you know, when we were talking about the cooking, but I really think that there's a collective shift towards valuing sustainability. So on every level on our planet right now, we need to value and prioritize sustainability. And so whether it's from the individual to like what's going on with, you know, all the environmental impact and everything that's like all the butterfly effect of what each person decides they're going to do every single day, to what the governments are doing, to what we're doing as humans to the planet, and you know, so on and so forth. And so this collective shift, which a lot of people, you know, talk about as a shift from more masculine values to more feminine values, it's also about like, you know, for a long time we've been living in this like, okay, how productive can we be? How much faster can you get something? And there's just this like obsession with instant gratification and like, what can I get now? And this 7, 8 has no soul is being scrapped for the version that's not the sprint, but it's like the marathon, because we're really realizing there's just a collective consciousness shift of, oh, we need to think about later in our lives. We need to think about the next generation. We need to think about the next planet. I don't know what we need to think about. There's a lot of other things, and where we got to a point where we just got so incredibly like, just, what's the word I'm looking for? Microscopic or whatever in our vision, that we got tunnel vision. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That now there is just, you see it everywhere you go. People are like, everyone, you know, my boyfriend's a life coach too, and we walk around and sometimes we, you know, we'll have dinner and socialize with people who are totally not in the industry, and every freaking person wants to do this, and every single person wants to get out of their job and like do something that they're passionate about. This was not happening 20, 30 years ago, because people weren't stuck in their cubicles. They weren't in that place where they got so you know, wired into the tunnel vision and that version of the goal. And so, okay, I just riffed big time on all of this. But
no, I love it.
But I think,
so good.
Yeah, I mean, it's that the sustainability aspect is like soul will give you sustainability on every level of what we do. So go sustainability.
Yes, and I think that's so key to what you're saying, because especially as women in the Western world right now, like, we have so much freedom and we can create so much impact and restore the balance through being more of who we are and through owning our feminine gifts, because that's the energy that's needed right now. So that's something I come back to a lot to think about, is like, wow, like, we can really, as women, doing something we're passionate about, doing something we're excited about that is sustainable and is in service of global sustainability in any way, is really hugely impactful, because we have a lot of power in the world in a way, right? Like, we live in the US. We not to say that we're above any other country, because I don't believe in that, but you know, we have an impact regardless, because we exist and we influence a lot of the things that are happening in the world. So if we're not conscious of the impact we're choosing, we're going to have an impact that's a default impact instead of one that's by design. And if we can choose to do better, why wouldn't we choose that option, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. My phone is like alarming, alarming me of something. All right. So my next question on the same vein is, I love sisterhood. I know you love sisterhood. So I want to talk about that for a little bit. What role does sisterhood play in your life and in your business? And what have you learned about yourself, about other women, about the idea of community and tribe from making sisterhood a priority?
Okay, so confession time. I could not say the word sister until very recently. It's bizarre because I'm all about sisterhood, yet the word could not come out of my mouth, and I couldn't write it either. And I remember telling my coach and all the women in my mastermind about this, and they were like, huh, that's so strange. And as I sat with it throughout the year that we were together in sisterhood, I came to realize that for me, for whatever reason, I had connected the word sister to a very super new age hippie out there feeling that I sometimes get like really intense resistance towards. And over the time that I had this last year with my mastermind and with my coach, who was all about sisterhood, is I just came to realize, like, that word and the meaning changed for me. Like, the feeling I got when I heard the word, which is just semantics, completely changed. And what I realized is that, I mean, I've always been about women lifting each other up, but I could only say it that way. I couldn't say it as sisterhood. It's just so bizarre. And now I'm all like, sisterhood, yeah. And so I say that only because there may be some women out there who are shy. I know for me, I was really shy to say that. And I like came out to like the group of women, and I was like, oh, I don't know. It's so embarrassing, but this is what it is. And I think that that's okay if there's another word that resonates more with you, but ultimately it's about us coming together and helping each other out instead of feeling like there isn't enough resources for everyone to go around. And from a somatic standpoint, from a body standpoint, what I'll say about this and why it's important in our lives is that ultimately our bodies want to feel safe and held. Our feminine essence, and I understand that some women don't have a primarily feminine essence, but in many cases we do. In most cases we do. The feminine really can only soften when she feels held by something that is solid. And I find that sisterhood is a container that when there isn't that masculine energy necessarily in other places of our lives, maybe there's no partnership that has masculine energy, maybe we're missing masculine energy in ourselves, whatever version that is, there is literally the feeling of your body when you just lay down in bed and you're like, ah, oh, right? That's sisterhood to me. It's knowing that I can fall back and there's just like a web of women who are like, oh, no, you're not falling. We're bringing you back up. And what that does is it's so healing on a somatic level, because in our bodies, our nervous system goes, oh, it's okay to be me. So there's this signaling that happens that rewires the story in our cells of, oh, it wasn't safe to be me, whether it was around like, mean girls in high school or something else with your experience in your feminine body where you felt like it's not okay to soften because someone's going to take advantage of me, or I'm going to be viewed as vulnerable or sensitive or a burden or emotional or blah, blah, blah. So many things that we could be. And so I think it ultimately comes back down to the physical, which is where I always bring it to, which is just like that feeling of like I'm on soft sheets and it feels like a cloud, and there's just a group of women hugging me and bringing me back up, whether it's physical or emotional. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I love it. And I love that you said, I love that your journey has been feeling uncomfortable with that word, because I've personally not felt that way, but I'm sure that a lot of women who are watching, you know, who are in my tribe or who are watching this video or who are reading my stuff on, you know, Instagram or Facebook or whatever, like I say, I use that term a lot, and I use it in my emails, and I wonder, are people actually, do they have resistance around that? I've never even thought of it before, that they might. So that's interesting.
I could be the only one.
No, I don't think you are. There's no way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so interesting and beautiful transformation of, okay, I feel comfortable with that now. That's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering too, like, what have you seen business-wise or in your more like, I don't know, I guess business would be in your life and business. What are the results that you've seen from having that community of women around you to support you? Like, how are things different, or how have they shifted for you because of that container?
Oh man, I would have given up. Yeah, I mean, let's just be super honest about it. I would have given up. I mean, my partner is definitely like a rock that just, and he's like my number one fan. So that would have possibly kept me going as well. But the women, you know, they just hold the vision for you when you don't see it. And they reflect, they're a mirror that reflect back what it is that you're really, really good at, when it is that you're getting lost in the heady stuff again. Like, you know, I had a completely botched launch earlier this year. It was just like a mess. And I had gotten so down the rabbit hole in like marketing strategy, and this is how I should do it, and this is how everyone else does it, and and it just did not work. Like that formula, the very classic formula that works for many people, just wasn't right for my community, and it clearly wasn't right for me and the way that I need to run my business. And so it could have very easily been me going, oh well, I mean, I tried it all, I'm gonna go get a job now. And it's the women coming back and saying, no, this is what we see in you, and this may be where things went wrong. That really, that sense of reflection and encouragement, and again, the net that holds you. Like every time you're like, I'm falling, and they're like, no, bring me back up. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to, is just a loving net.
I cannot believe, I really am convinced that we are like soul sisters in a very deep way, because I had the exact same thing happen. With a botched launch. I tried to do everything perfectly, by the book, strategy, intense, and like nothing happened. It was like crickets, like nothing. And that's where I feel like what I was saying earlier about the soul and the why has to come first for me. And the energy has to be in alignment within me first and foremost. That's the most important thing. Launching anything, trying to start anything, create anything in my business, in the world at all, it has to start with me. And I think that's what I learned from that experience. It sounds like you probably learned the same thing, but I kind of came up with my own method of doing that, and in a way that felt good to me, and that was actually effective because it was authentic. And people felt the energy and the intention behind it. But the sisterhood aspect of that was definitely key in recovering from something like that. Because I mean, how easy is it for us as, you know, women who have gone to college, who have had other career paths in the past, to be like, oh, well, I could just go back and do that. But when I think about that, it's really not even an option. Yeah. Like if I'm being serious with myself, do you feel that way? Yeah. Like you can't really go back. It's just, it's there if you need it, but it's not really an option. Like you're going to do whatever it takes at this point too. So.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, and another reason why I think we're soul sisters is I can't really tell because but you were moving your head one way, and I thought I have that exact turquoise IKEA thing. I had to fight really hard to get it. My boyfriend was like, "What is with that color?" So I'm like, "Yep, it's official. We're the same."
Yeah, it's so cool. I love it. So I have one last question for you, but is there anything that you wish I would have asked or anything else that you want to share before I ask you the final question?
No, I feel like we've really covered a broad spectrum of delicious topics. So I feel good. I feel good. Yeah.
Me too. I feel very sensually in tune with all the things we've covered. So my final question is, what do you love about being a woman? Or what do you love about being feminine?
Yeah. Oh gosh, so many things, but I would say it's really about our incredible capacity to feel pleasure on so many levels and in so many different ways. So I can see the cat is about to jump. No, don't do it. Don't do it. It's like, she's like launching. She's like, I want to show you guys pleasure. Yeah, basically to me, and that's everything from like the physical. We are just wired in such a way, like in like our vagina, like our clitoris, like there's just the intricate web. I don't know if anyone who's listening has read the book Vagina by Naomi Wolf, but it's phenomenal because it talks all about the neurology of the orgasm and how it's connected to our creativity. And so she gets into all the second chakra stuff. And what's really phenomenal is she was reading about and talking about how, men, all of them have pretty much the same grid wiring of nerves, but every single woman is like a whole different art piece on the inside in terms of like the nerve endings. And that's just like a physical representation of what we're able to feel on a much larger scale. So we all know women can, it's an ongoing, joke and tease about how women can have so many more different, more intricate, exciting styles of orgasm, and men are pretty much they're like, oh, it feels the same every time. And I think you can take that into the world and into your like experiences. Women we're just so multifaceted and able to feel things on so many levels all at the same time that it's like, yeah, sometimes about once a month, I'm like, I don't like being a woman, or really, it's just a little harder. But in return, we get all this magic of being able to be more sensitive to everything, to feel it on so many levels. So I would definitely say that when I think about being in a woman's body versus a man's body and experience, that would be like what is highlighted to me as the most exciting, is just infinite possibilities of pleasure. Yeah.
Beautiful. And such a good tie-in with your why and your mission and what you do. So that makes so much sense. I think if I were to say, like, I recently shared this with one of my clients in my Freedom is Sexy program who was feeling a little bit like we were toward the end of the program, and you get that little like blip of, is this really going where I want it? Like, am I actually doing enough? And I'm, getting in that headspace of can I really do what I'm setting out to do? And one of the things I I was thinking about this because when I see these women, right, and you feel the same way, I'm sure, there's like something so amazing about watching them come into their power and really like own it and uncover all these like feminine gifts that they never really knew were there. And one of the things I told her was like, you can do this. Like, you can do anything. Think about the way your body is designed to literally create human life. Like, doesn't that blow your mind when you think about the capacity of a woman and the limitless potential of, we are literally designed to create human life. Like, is there anything that we can't do? Not really. Like, that's probably the hardest thing there is to do in the world. And it comes naturally to us because our bodies just know what to do. And so creating anything in the world, I think, is so, it's just so amazing what we're able to do and what we're able to create, because we are literally designed to create, like to bring life into the world. And I don't know if you know this, but the women in my mastermind for the last 9 months that I've been in with Jay, I was like the only non-pregnant one, pretty much. Like, there were a couple of us, but there were 9 women total, and like at least half were pregnant during the mastermind at some point, or one of them gave birth at the very beginning, and then we found out Jay was pregnant, and then 2 more were pregnant, and it was just insane. Like, everybody was pregnant, and I was like, I kind of feel left out. Like, why am I being drawn to a mastermind where everyone is pregnant? And this is not the stage of my life that I'm in at all. And it just is like, at some point I was like, I feel kind of like out of the loop. Like, I don't know. And then I think what I've learned after reflecting a lot on that is that experience of like, wow, being a woman means I can literally, like, I'm watching these women create human life. And that's inspiring because I'm trying to create a business which feels like a baby in some respects, right? Like, you have to be patient with it, and it's a sustainable growth process. And, you know, you teach it and it grows, and you can't yell at it to walk or expect it to run at stage in the first trimester, right? Like, if you were trying to push at that point, you would be just exhausting yourself and nothing would be happening. Obviously, the baby is not ready to be birthed yet, and you're just exhausting the energy and wasting it, wherein it could be just going toward nesting and feeling really good in your body and nourishing yourself, and, you know, all of those things that contribute to the growth of the baby. If you think of it in terms of a business or whatever you're creating in the world, right? It's like, if we direct our focus and energy toward that instead of trying to push prematurely or exhaust ourselves, where our focus, we're like future tripping way far in the future of like, well, I should be here. And that's like saying, oh, well, I should have like a 3-year-old in the first trimester. It just doesn't work that way, you know? And I think we have to learn to be patient with ourselves and trust the timing and the cycles of creativity and of creation as women, as we build businesses or as we do anything in the world that we're creating. I think that's something that I've recently come to understand in a really deeper way that just completely blows my mind every time I think about it. And it reminds me like how strong and powerful and capable and possible every single thing is, especially as a woman. It's just like that anchoring thought is something I come back to, and I'm like, okay, like of course I've got this. Of course I don't need to be overwhelmed. I have everything I need at my fingertips. It's so cool to think about it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful way of looking at it. The idea of like having your child walk when it's just not ready. Yeah.
So I know that you have a special gift for everyone who's tuning into this interview. Do you want to share what that is?
Sure. Yeah, I would love to gift anyone who really connected to this and feels like, all right, I just want to connect a little bit deeper to a certain energy, just to all of my senses in general, to my body. You can sign up for a pleasure discovery session with me. All you need to do is just email thepleasureplate@gmail.com. So it's just one word, the pleasure plate, like a plate that you eat, at gmail.com, and we'll hook you up. I'll hook you up with a free session. So
I'll post that. I'll definitely post the email, and I think you sent me a link as well for access that, to claim their free session with you. So I'll make sure that that's in the video and the blog post as well. And if you are looking for more leadership in your life and you want to become a revolutionary leader of your own life and the world, I have a really special gift for all of you. Also, it's called the Visionary Goddess Action Plan. It's a 4-part audio training series about how to become the revolutionary leader of your life and leap into action. So it'll get you into action and really understanding the 4 major parts of what it looks like to be a leader of your life and the world. So be sure to sign up for that. You can find that at the link below this video or at emilycastle.com/love, or on my homepage, it's there too. But so awesome. So thank you so much. I've so loved our time together, Nadia. Thank you for being here and for sharing your brilliance with the world in a bigger way, and for doing everything that you do in your business. It's so amazing and inspiring and just beautiful and so needed. And thank you for helping women tap into their sensuality and all of the amazing things that you're doing. So thank you for sharing your brilliance and wisdom with us today. And we will talk to you all soon. Thank you for joining, anyone who's tuned in, and we will talk to you soon in like a week or 2. So talk to you soon. Thank you.